What's up, everybody? It is that time of the week again, although a new night of the week for the Two Buck Sports Podcast. I am your co-host, Rusty Buckets, coming into you Thursday night, a day later time, because my co-host, Uncle Buck over here, has decided to have a social life, I guess. And so now we have to record on Thursday nights. Uncle Buck, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Rusty, I just want to take a minute and thank you and all of our listeners for being patient with us. You will be getting this on Friday again this week. I think that works out okay. I think there's definitely pluses and minuses to both nights, but my family and I my kids have been going to church in Ripley on Wednesday nights, and my wife and I made the decision that we should start going with them. So that's the reason for the schedule change. I feel like it's as good of a reason as I can give you, as good of an excuse as I can give you. But I do appreciate everybody. I hope everybody did not just have a hour and a half slot on Thursdays as their only availability for a podcast. That's the thing about podcasts, is that they're on demand. You listen to them whenever you want to. I hope that all of our listeners could only fit us in for an hour and a half on Thursdays, because if so, by the time you listen to it, it's probably going to be pretty dated.
That's it. You're going to be a little bit behind. And so we do owe a special shout out to Cousin Kirk, friend of the podcast, faithful listener. Last night, immediately, I don't think he'd seen it, like immediately after I posted on Instagram that we were going to be recording on Thursday nights, Drew, it had to have been 10 minutes. And he texted and he was like, podcast night, let's go. And I was like, Drew, you want to tell him?
Part of me knowing Kurt makes me think that he saw it and was just going to stick the knife in. And
that's what he did.
Yeah.
Because his exact words were, "I'm more excited than a meth head finding a spool of copper wire." So if you're from North Mississippi, you know what that's all about. So shout out Cousin Kirk. We do owe you an apology. I said, "You're going to tell him, Drew," and his response was, "Did y'all break up?" And I said, "No, we're just seeing other people."
Yeah. No, well, see, the thing about Kirk is, it makes me not feel as sympathetic, is that he is a highway patroller that cruises the highways and byways for 8 to 10 hours a day. And so I know of all of our listeners, Kirk's got time. So he'll be okay.
So when you listen to this, Kirk, you make sure you share it and tell everybody how wonderful this podcast is.
Yeah. Or else I'm not getting you a Christmas gift.
That's it. But yeah, I did get several messages about it on Instagram, so I appreciate our listeners being aware of it. And Drew, I've been watching our analytics on our RSS feed, and we do get progressive downloads throughout the weekend, so I don't think it's going to mess anything. And we owe a quick shout out to Canada, because
we're in Canada now.
We've been downloaded 133 times in Canada.
I think we need to start talking about hockey.
I mean, apparently, or curling. I can really get into curling.
Yeah.
Because I had a patient one time, I've shared this story. He said, how Americans drink beer and bowl, they drink beer and curl in Canada. I'm like, bro, I'm all for that. Let's go.
The only thing more dangerous than drinking and bowling is drinking and curling.
That's it.
I mean, not to bring up very sore subjects, bowling and ice skating. I mean, drinking and ice skating would be really bad, because rest in peace to the English hockey player.
Holy smokes.
You're talking about never wanting to get on skates ever again. That'll do it.
Did you see the video?
Yes, I'm a sadist. I did get on Twitter, because if you want to see a video of anything, get on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm not a hockey player. I've only ice skated one time, but in my professional opinion, that looked intentional.
Yeah, they have an unwritten rule in hockey.
Sweet chin music.
That's it. He pulled a Heartbreak Kid on him, and there's an unwritten rule in hockey that your skates don't leave the ice because of that very reason.
Of course. And it should be written. Should be a written rule. Yeah.
As a PT, I'm like you. I'm a glutton for punishment, and I'm going to watch the gnarly injury videos. Yeah. And I watched that and was immediately like, "This was a bad idea."
Yeah. Rest in peace. I mean, I don't really. I don't make light of that at all. But we just got to thinking about dangerous things you could do, and ice skating, because of the recency of that injury, it was the first thing that popped in my mind, because I would lose a limb at best if I ice skated while inebriated.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, that's a good band name. Ice skated while inebriated.
What's Andy Dwyer say? New band name, called it.
Yeah. 2 skin, 4 skin, 5 skin. Scarecrow boat.
Scarecrow rowboat.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things to go back and look at from Parks and Rec, is him going through all all of his band names.
I don't
Puppy
have
Pendulum,
it
Penis Pendulum.
On my water bottle, I've got 2 Parks and Rec stickers. One of them is my favorite Ron Swanson quote that I live my life by, and Mama, close your ears. But it's never half-ass 2 things. We're gonna whole-ass 1 thing. And then I've got Andy Dwyer saying new band name called it, because that's one of my favorite bits of Parks and Rec is these random things that people will say, and he'll say, "Ooh, new band name called it."
Yeah, that's the first saying is like a life motto. It's one of those things. It's a Ron Swanson quote. I feel like it's a quote that my dad would have told me when I was a kid, because he always threw in, with his sayings always comes a 4-letter word, or in this case, a 3-letter word.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's a really good one. That's one to live by.
I'm gonna paint that on the wall. You see these people get these stickers
mural.
Like "Always kiss me goodnight" or these Bible verses. Mine's gonna say that on the wall.
A family that laughs together, lives together, or whatever.
100%. Yeah, live, laugh, love, or live, laugh, love, whatever it is that all these white women have on their walls. But Drew, I know we both had a couple weeks, man. But tell me, what was the highlight of your week? What was the best party week? You got anything?
Yeah, I actually got 2 things. I'm gonna switch it up. First and foremost, I got to take my kids, my older 2. We left the baby at home, because the 4 of us, my wife and Braxton and Chloe, all went to the Ole Miss game on Saturday. It's a night game against Vanderbilt. Tickets were readily available. There's this guy, and I think he does a great thing. I think every fan base needs to have a guy like this. So tickets at Ole Miss are in high demand right now. They're expensive. They're an awesome ticket to have, especially for SEC games. Ticket prices are going through the roof. The game day experience is great. We've talked about it on this podcast, and I'll go into further examples in a minute. But they were playing Vanderbilt, and so the tried and true fans, this is one of those honeydew days. Okay, honey, I'll give you this Saturday. We're playing Vanderbilt. I saw this funny video, made me think about it. It's this guy his wife is always on him about all we do is watch football. All we do is watch football. And so he goes up to her and he says, "Honey, I know you tell me all the time that all we do is watch football. So I just wanted to tell you right now, I've been feeling convicted about it, but I'm going to give up Wednesday night football for you. We'll watch whatever movie you want to watch." So,
I've seen that. That's funny.
Yeah, and
she's like, "Really?"
Yeah. And so that's what we went to Ole Miss and watched the Vanderbilt game. But this guy, how I got off on this YouTube video, I saw it beyond me. But this guy takes if you are not going to your game to do your honeydew list or whatever, he just says, "Send me your tickets and I'll find people who don't have tickets or can't afford to go or haven't been able to take their kids to a game before." And so I just messaged him. His name's Kenny Carson. I think you know him, Rusty. Used to run the Dinner Bell in Corinth.
Yeah, and he always had the those paintings and pictures of the SEC stadiums and moments and whatnot. And my granddad, I'd hate to know how much my family, especially my granddad, spent on Alabama Daniel Moore paintings at the Dinner Bell.
Yeah, and so I texted Kenny and I was like, "Hey, I'm trying to take my kids to their first game. We, don't have tickets. I'll buy some, but I thought I'd check with you first." He just said, "How many you want?" And I said, 4. He sent them to me. They were on the 50-yard line, just free tickets.
That's
and
wild.
18 rows up. It was great. Best seats I've ever had. And so we get there. It was an incredible time. It was the game itself, obviously. We'll get into the game later, but it left it wasn't a nail biter by any means. There was no drama to it at all. But I can say, as a fan that's heard about how the game day experience has changed at Ole Miss, especially at night, I can now attest to that. Mm-hmm. It's a light shows every break. It's hype music. There's no Sweet Caroline.
It's a party.
It truly is. And it was homecoming. You could tell after halftime it was 26-0. Everybody kind of cleared out, especially the students. It kind of got boring, but it wasn't for lack of effort. I mean, there was still light shows throughout. There was coordinated music where they, dropped the lights and everybody held their phone light up, and in points it really felt like a concert. It was an experience to be at, and it was so nice to have the kids there to let them take it in. We got on the Jumbotron.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was so funny. Like, we were standing there, and Chloe was up dancing in her cheerleading outfit with her powder blue pom-poms and whatnot, and somebody slapped me. They're like, "Chloe's on the Jumbotron," and I look up and I see Chloe and I see the people around me, And for some reason, it took me like 5 seconds to realize there I am right in the middle of it.
You're
And
looking
so
like a doofus.
naturally, I just hit the truffle shuffle for everybody in the stadium. I just like, yeah.
Because what else would you hit, man?
I
Well
don't know
done.
why it's my panic move, but it is. I've done the same thing on the Jumbotron. Haley and I, when we were freshly married, we hadn't even gotten the kids yet. So, I mean, it was early on in the baseball season, right after we got married.
Yeah.
Went to a game, Valentine's Day weekend, actually.
Huh.
And put us up on
man.
the Jumbotron. We were the only two in like the far section on the top row. And I just had my arm around her. We were just lounging, watching baseball. Put us on the Jumbotron, and here I go, truffle shuffle.
And she's like, I'm married a good one.
Yeah. And of course she laughed, and that's how I knew I made a good decision.
That's right.
You know.
There's many other reasons,
yeah.
but shout out to Haley.
And so Chloe it made her whole week, you know, being able to get on the big screen. She kept on saying, I got on the big screen, you know.
That's fun.
Part 2, I've got proof of this. It popped in my head because I reached in my pocket. Halloween.
Let's go.
I have
the candy tax.
Candy that I've taken away from my 1.5-year-old because she runs around the house with candy in the wrapper in her mouth. So I confiscate it and stick it in my pocket. And just random times during the day, I reach down in my pocket and I've got a blow pop or a, you know, Butterfinger. I'm not eating a Tootsie Roll, but
ooh, I like Tootsie Rolls, man.
Tootsie Rolls are garbage, Rusty.
You're garbage.
No. It's like if Tootsie Rolls are the mayonnaise of Halloween candy.
Wow. What a statement.
Yeah, I stand by it 100%.
I used to eat Tootsie Rolls all the time at the Corinth Christmas parade because that was like the only thing people would throw out was Tootsie Rolls and blow pops. But yeah, listen, man, Halloween, it's a great excuse to have a best. For me, it was Halloween also. Drew, I don't know if I sent you this picture or not. I think I will. If I haven't yet, I'll send you the picture. But my best for the week was Halloween as well. Normally here at Benchmark in Myrtle Beach, we all go all out for Halloween. Each clinic has a theme. We didn't really do that this year, but I did. And if you saw my Instagram, I was, as my t-shirt shows, the Macho Man Randy Savage. Oh, yeah. I was carrying a box of Slim Jims. I had these wild 80s jogger britches on. I had on a mullet wig, the big glasses. I took a picture of me holding some coffee cream with the cream rises to the top. You know, love some Macho Man. So, but the best part about that was I spent about 3 hours in a Starbucks on meetings and doing some analytics and stuff I needed to do. And I was the only fool dressed up in Starbucks. And so the looks on these people's faces, they'd walk in, look around, look at me and do a double take. And like, is that the Macho Man? Little do they know he died a few years ago, as we discussed off air. Yep. But the best thing, I got to send you this picture because I don't think I did, but I had a very professional meeting with my boss and my teammates, like kind of at my level and above. And so I took a picture of it. Because it was one of these was not like the other. Because there's my boss in a quarter zip, very professional. There's all these dress shirts and these ladies in these nice like work attire. And then there's me with a mullet wig, a headband, the Pit Viper sunglasses.
Yeah, great.
Just like full on like Macho Man mode in the professional meeting.
What's your favorite Halloween costume that you've ever worn personally? Like you have worn?
So the Macho Man was pretty good this year. I got 2 others, and they've all kind of been in my adult life, I guess.
Yeah, I don't remember dressing up much as a kid.
Like I was always a Power Ranger or a Ninja Turtle as a kid. Right. Like those are cool. But like in 2019 at one of our clinics, we did the Benchmark Grand Dune Tourists. And I wore jorts, Crocs, and socks. I painted my nose white. I had a bucket hat and a big camera with a Hawaiian shirt. My coworkers, both of them had fanny packs. One of them had a selfie stick and a camera. Like we went all out to look like tourists, and our patients loved it. We made a newspaper. Like we were all over the place. It was awesome. And then in been like 2017 was the last time I shaved my beard, and I wore a little Jerry curl, like little wig, and I was AC Slater from Saved by the Bell, which was another really, really good one.
We knew each other in 17, didn't we? Where was this?
That was it.
Was this in Corinth?
It was in Corinth. It was one of my ex's Halloween parties. And I was AC Slater. I shaved the beard, had the curly wig, had the tight sleeve shirt rolled up with it's the only time in my life I've ever wore Converse, and I was AC Slater.
Yeah, they're not comfortable.
Yeah.
1 year, 2 of them that stick out for me, and I've never been a big Halloween guy, and it's not because I don't like dressing up. Just that I don't really have the parties to go to, you know. me and Haley went as grandparents one year,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh, that's
again,
good.
all of our stories go back to shaving. I
Mm-hmm.
shaved just a mustache, and the best part about going as grandparents was that we both just went to Walmart and bought
Yeah.
robes,
Yeah.
and we
Oh,
just wore
yeah.
robes and tall socks and slippers, and it
Yeah.
was the most comfortable I've ever been in a party in my life.
I imagine, which made me remember my other one was I went as Ron Swanson one year. You remember that?
Yeah.
I shaved the mustache.
Uh-huh.
I drank scotch all night. I had a little like stick horse, little
Little
Sebastian.
Sebastian.
I sent you a picture, and then I sent my
Uh-huh.
brother and my cousin in a group chat, and I said Ron Swanson or not allowed within 500 yards of a school zone.
Yeah, that was unanimous.
Unanimously Ron
Yeah,
Swanson.
the other one I went to in college when we were a little wilder, because we've all tamed down a little bit in our old age. Uh, I went as a drunk uncle.
The drunkle.
Yeah, and it was like the easiest costume I could come up with at the time. There was a big party at a friend's house, and I basically just wore everything I normally wear, except I got one of those hats with the mullet in the back, and that was my costume.
That's incredible.
And I proceeded to act like a drunk uncle.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask if you got a beef. Our both of ours might be the same.
the belly aches after Halloween.
Or
because I eat candy nonstop.
There's that. I was thinking more about our Memphis Grizzlies that we're gonna get into here in a minute.
Oh yeah, they're. I think it's just time that we just say they suck.
So listen, you got any other your beef?
No,
maybe
well, this is
we'll go right
this is
into
our
it.
beef. Yeah.
All right. So I got last night during the game. I got a series of text messages from people. I wanted to read these because I got one that just said "bruh." I got one that said, "It's only 4.25 games. It's only 4.25 games. It's only 4.25 games." I got one that said, "Okay, I'm starting to panic."
That was me.
That was you. I got another one that said, "Is it time to panic?" Question mark.
Yeah.
And then my favorite was from you as well. At some point, these teams are shooting career nights from three because of us.
Yeah. And
the Grizzlies are bad.
What's funny is when the guy, whoever it was, that said it's only 4.25 games, that means he takes you that after the first quarter.
Shout out Mike and Thomas.
Yeah, which ended with the Grizzlies being down 42-19 to the Utah Jazz.
Dude, they were also bad. Like they have Jordan Clarkson. That's how bad they are.
Yeah. Now,
and then I will say the other one, you made a very valid point. The fact that Vince Williams, Jacob Gillard, and Fat Lofton are all getting first half minutes. God bless the Memphis Grizzlies, man.
Soon as
look, you ready?
Yeah.
Gilliard already.
Yeah. As soon as Gilliard went into the game, I was like, all right, that's a wrap. And it sucks that it's just started the season this way. It started with the Steven Adams kick to the groin, and then the Santi Aldama kick to the groin, and then Derrick Rose has been bad. And then
Luke
now
Kennard's brain is broken.
Yeah, and Luke Kennard is he's like 1 for 25 to start the season. It's just been a terrible. The stats, I don't know if you looked at them. It's not sustainable, and that's the only kind of hope that I have.
That's why I'm not panicking.
Is that the Grizzlies' shot quality? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the shot quality a lot last year. I meant to write these numbers down, but I didn't. But the crux of it is the Grizzlies ended up losing by what? 25?
Yeah, 133 to 109.
133 to 109. 24 points.
Mm-hmm.
Shot quality had that as a 12-point win for the Grizzlies. And shot quality had the Mavericks game, the other game that the Grizzlies lost, game number 4, I guess. Had that as a Grizzlies win.
And that would hurt because we had opportunities to win that game. And then you nailed it. You texted me and said, Luka's about to drive a dagger, isn't he? And then they made that bogus call where Luka had 2 hands and we had 3 hands on the ball. And they gave him a timeout. And then immediately after the timeout, he buries a 3. And at that point, like that became insurmountable.
Luka's going to be Luka. So with the since we last saw, we talked last Thursday. That was after the Nuggets game, I guess. So since then, we had a loss against Washington at home. That's the only one that's inexcusable. I mean, Washington on the road. That's the one that's inexcusable. That team is not good. And they beat us probably more soundly than any other team that's beaten us so far, including the defending champions.
Shout out Stones Jones.
Yeah. And then Dallas. So the Dallas game, we did what we did best, and we got down early. much like the Nuggets game, they fought back and they got it to within one, or if not, no, they took the lead by one. I believe.
Mm-hmm.
They never.
No, we never had a
took
lead, but we got within like one or two.
Yeah, and then Luka just does what Luka. I mean, it was the first, and what's turned into back-to-back games now to where teams are just shooting the cover off the ball from three against us, and that's all they're shooting. Yep. Luka went nuclear, hitting step backs. Hitting sidestep threes. Just anything Luka wanted to do. He showed that the reason why he's a perennial MVP favorite or front runner or top three in MVP voting. He just dominated us, and he did what great players do is he put his team on his back when it mattered the most, and it's where you miss Ja Morant the most, the guy that can stop runs or when all else fails, just get to the rim and get fouled or get to the rim and one or drive and dish, whatever you've got to do. You want guys like Ja Morant or Luka Doncic or Giannis. I mean, there's only a handful of guys in the league that have got that kind of ability to put a team on their back, and that's where you really miss him in those instances. And then you get to last night, and they played at Utah, and it got out of control early. Utah at the half was shooting over 50% from three, with like 14 or 16 made threes at the half. They were shooting over 70% at the end of the first quarter. Yeah. And I mean, it was everybody. At one point they said Kelly Olynyk and, it was Kelly Olynyk and Jordan
Clarkson last night.
Jordan Clarkson and the Finnish guy.
Mark, I'm going to butcher it.
Markkanen. Laura
Markkanen, thank you.
We're all 100% from three at some point during the second quarter. Like, it was just stupid. And never fear, though, because our boy Bismack Biyombo is coming to save
the savior, the rim protector. He ain't going to help us offensively a lick outside of a few offensive rebounds here and there. But good luck getting a shot off in the paint with him and Jaren Jackson Jr. in the game. Speaking of, man, like, Tripp is back to his old ways. He's not aggressive. He's being very passive, and part of it, we're not really scheming for him. Like, we're waiting too long. How many times has he had single digits or even 0 points at halftime of a game so far this year? Why are we not getting him involved in the first 2 or 3 minutes of the game? Because he's not getting in a rhythm. There's been multiple times this year where, again, he's had less than 8 points at halftime, and he's like an all-world type talent, and there's absolutely no reason for him to have 8 points at halftime of a game that we desperately need him. Like you said earlier, no Ja Morant, no Steven Adams, no Santi Aldama. Luke Kennard's brain is broken. Like, there's nothing that we need more than Jaren Jackson Jr. to take over and dominate. And we've talked about this before. It feels like a Marc Gasol situation where, like, you want him to take over a game, and when he does, it's incredible. But we're just not getting that this year. So far in 2023, we haven't gotten that.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Jaren for several reasons, but his shots are going in. He's shooting a fair percentage from the field. He's staying out of foul trouble. He's being an anchor on your defense still. Yeah. But we know what Jaren is. If there's a reason to be concerned, we know what Jaren is when he's not playing beside a big rim protector, a big lug in the middle like Steven Adams, especially offensively. And it could not have had a worse start to the season matchup-wise for Jaren with having games against big lugs like Walker Kessler last night and with Jokic in game 2 and Zion in game 1. Where he hasn't figured out how to be a 5. And I love Tillman, but he's not, they don't play well together. He needs somebody that's more of an anchor on offense to really allow him to spread the floor and to eat up the lane without being guarded by a 5 in the paint,
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Like, I love X. We were talking about this last night. Like, he's shooting a lot of threes right now. And you said rightfully so, they're open, but they're open for a reason. Like, X is not the guy you want, shooting threes all night long.
Well, you go back and think about the playoffs. when we played against the Lakers in the first round. And this is a scheme, the other teams have coaches too. And so when you've got guys like Bain and Luke Kennard and Jaren Jackson Jr. on offense, the other team zeroes in on them. And so those open looks from Xavier Tillman or Zaire Williams, they're open for a reason, and that's because that's the shot that the other team wants us to take.
Right.
The difference in the reason why I brought it back to the Lakers series last year is because that's what we did to the Lakers. We dared Rui Hachimura to take shots. And what did Rui Hachimura do? He looked like freaking Michael Jordan out there.
He couldn't miss.
He made them.
God.
And when the Grizzlies won games in the playoffs last year, it's because Xavier Tillman made his shots. They're open. They're going to be open. They're open for a reason because every shot he takes, Desmond Bain is not taking. And Jaren Jackson Jr. is not taking. And so you've got to figure out a way to scheme those guys into decent shots. And I think that's the point you're trying to make, is that there don't seem to be scheming Jaren Jackson many open looks. Bain's great. He's played great. He's had plenty of open shots. He's performed exactly how I expected Desmond Bain to perform.
Right.
But with the absence of John Morant, you've got to have, Marcus Smart, Zaire Williams, who had a big preseason.
Yeah.
You've got to have guys like that can also hit shots, because if not, on offense, you're playing 3-on-5.
Yeah. I mean, Des had 21 last night on 19 shots, and so he's still going to get some points. Not a very efficient night last night, 7 for 19, but you got Zaire had 8, who's 2 for 5. X had 0 in his 14 minutes, and we've got to have guys that start stepping up, and that's what's it's sad, especially looking back 2 years ago, how good our bench was and how much we won when Ja was out, because of guys like Stones and BC and these guys that could come off the bench and could score and give you quality minutes. We just don't have that right now. D Rose has come in and played good basketball for Derrick Rose, who's 35, 36 years old. But we just don't have those same guys walking through the door. And you're right. Back to what your original point was, we're going to regress to the mean. We're not going to shoot 25% from 3 every night. We're not going to keep playing at this historically bad tick of basketball. Right. Yes, we're the last team without a win, but one is coming. We've got Portland tomorrow night. That is a winnable basketball game.
There's no reason back against Portland.
There's no reason we couldn't win both of those games or go 1-1. Because I feel like we're at least on par, if not a little bit better than Portland. There's no reason we shouldn't win those games.
No, we should win both of those games.
Winning cures a lot of things. And so you find a way to get a couple wins together. All of a sudden, you put 2, 3, 4 games together and you're right back in the thick of things. We've just got to get to Christmas. We're 0-5. We got 20 games left. We just got to get through those 20 games. Josh's not going to fix everything, and all of a sudden we're going to be the 2 seed in the West. I was watching our video on Instagram earlier today trying to get excited about the Grizz again because we were fired up just 3 short weeks ago.
Right.
He's not going to be the cure-all, but we'll be a lot better with John Morant at the helm.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the frustrating part for Grizzlies fans right now, with the front office in particular, is one, they should have had a backup option for Steven Adams.
Right.
You had to have a second center on the roster if you knew that there was a chance that it was going to need surgery to be repaired. Mm-hmm. 2 is you look around the league and you say, well, who we could really use right now? DeAnthony Melton. We could use Kyle Anderson. We could use Tyus Jones. You can go through the list, and like you mentioned depth a minute ago, and that's where your depth is. And you didn't really replace it with anything. You replaced it with David Roddy and Zaire Williams.
Jake freaking LaRavia, who has been trash.
Yeah. And I know what's going on is, one, you've got Jaren's contract that kicks in. Ja's contract and kicks in next year. Bain's contract kicks in next year, and you're not wasn't never going to be able to afford Kyle Anderson, DeAnthony Melton. They kind of tried to get what they could get for him while they could afford them.
Sure.
It's just that they didn't replace them with serviceable wings. And the wing position that we thought was stacked with, you've got Zaire and Bain and you got Marcus Smart, Derrick Rose. they've just all been trash. Roddy's
Yeah.
not been good. None of them's been good. And so there's going to have to be a corner that's going to be turned here, and you can't be 7-18 when Ja comes back.
Mm-hmm.
And so the 2 games at Portland this weekend are big games. They've got to win both of them, in my opinion. And the reason why I think that is, if you look at the Grizzlies' schedule after these 2 away games at Portland, is you've got the Heat at home, the Jazz at home, at the Clippers, at the Lakers, the Spurs at home, and the Celtics at home. Of those games, I think you're favored in 2 of them. And if it goes chalk the way it's been going, you're looking easy at a 2-10 start to the year.
Yeah,
and you can't dig yourself in too big of a hole before Ja gets back.
I mean, the Clippers and the Lakers had an epic basketball game the other night where like all their superstars went for 30 plus. The Celtics just put 155 points on the Pacers, just beat them like a drum.
The Celtics look like the best team in basketball.
There's some, especially if Porzingis can stay healthy and playing at the tick that he's playing. But there's some tough basketball ahead of us.
Right.
We get our Dillon Brooks rematch later this month on the 22nd. But we've got to find some. You got to win the games you should win. We need to beat Portland twice. We have to beat the Jazz. The Spurs are another team that you have to get because those Miami, even though Miami's in the worst team in the Eastern Conference through 4 games. You're not going to beat the Clippers. You're not going to beat the Lakers. You hope to not lose by 50 to Boston and get embarrassed. There's some ugly basketball ahead of us. And like you said, we can't be 7-18 when Ja comes back because there's no digging out of that hole. You just hope that Biyombo gives us that middle presence, those offensive rebounds that we need, that gives us that rim protector that we're missing with Steven Adams. And like you said earlier, frees up Jaren Jackson Jr. to do unicorn things where he can get out in space and get out and play, his game of basketball.
Because, and I've said on this podcast before, the Grizzlies are a team that's pace and space. It's new era NBA basketball. We're no longer stuck in the mud like the grit and grind days. Mm-hmm. We're trying to run and gun. And if you can't get rebounds and can't force missed shots and turnovers, you can't run. And what's happening in the first 5 games of this year is we're taking the ball out of the net every single possession. And you're forcing us into a half-court offense, and that's just not how we're built.
Right.
And I'll keep saying it until I'm blue in the face or until it turns around. But this team has shooters on it.
Yeah.
They've got to make shots. Luke Kennard did not forget how to shoot a basketball. This is not a 51st State situation where he got knocked in the head and forgot how to shoot. It's not that.
Right.
Baines held up his end, but like Kennard, Zaire, Roddy, those guys have got to start knocking down shots.
That's it,
and they're capable of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other team, surprisingly or not, is capable of missing shots.
We haven't seen it so far.
We haven't seen it yet.
But they can.
They can. It is possible.
Not everybody's going to shoot 50% from 3 on us every night.
Yeah, we're not going to complete the 82nd game of the year and look back and see that other teams are shooting 55% from 3 from us on the season. It's just not going to happen. There's going to be a regression to the mean here, and there's going to have to be a progression to the mean here because you're not going to look back and say that after 82 games that the Grizzlies shot historic lows from 3 and 25%.
Right.
It's just not happening.
No.
But the offense is so reliant on the 3, and they will be until Ja gets back, and even after that, that you will be able to look at box scores and tell if the Grizzlies win or not based on how many threes they make.
Yeah, and you kind of nailed it earlier, and we'll kind of close up with this because I'm tired of talking about this terrible basketball team. It's like Taylor Jenkins has not been the same Taylor Jenkins as far as scheming, as far as making adjustments. This offense, and again, he's probably doing the best he can with what he has to work with. This offense feels very slow, very sluggish.
Again, I'm pushed back on that because
I haven't seen it.
And Taylor Jenkins will tell you it comes from a defensive effort, but they're getting open shots, Rusty. They are getting open shots. The shot quality tells you you're still got a losing record, But 2 of our 3 losses, including the one we just got beat by 24, we should have won by 13.
But the people we're not getting the people we need to get shots. We're getting, sure, I'll give you, we're giving Xavier Tillman shots. Like, we give Xavier Tillman shots all year long, we'll go 0-82. Like, we've got to start doing a better job of getting our shooters open. Like, they can scheme for it, but you've got to be able to run some pick plays in motion and get these guys open. You can't just count on X and David Roddy and Zaire to be your shooters when you've got guys like Dez and Jaron who can actually shoot.
I agree with you, but there's not a coach that if Xavier Tillman is a 33% 3-point shooter, we're winning some of these games that we've lost, and that's what he is. It's not good. He does not ever going to shoot for 40%, but he should make 1 out of 3 on most nights.
So far,
but that's what I'm saying. If it will come back around because his shots he's taking are not dumb shots. This is not Dylan Brooks forcing shots. This is wide freaking open.
And like, he's still missing.
I know, I get it. But my point is, it will come back around. If he continues to take wide open shots, he will start making shots to get his average to what it is. This is a very small sample size, and it could not be a worse start to a season.
I'm not panicking. I'm not hitting the panic button. And I'd rather him get his big butt back underneath the basket and clear up room for other guys to take those threes. Like what we need him to be is to be a more Steven Adams presence under the goal, which he can't. He's not Steven Adams, but we need more of that.
Yeah, but he's not going to get under the goal either because that blocks driving lanes. He's got to be a screener and an effective screener, and that's where Steven Adams lived. And that's not Xavier Tillman's game. Yeah. Again, if Xavier Tillman takes 10 shots, 10 threes a game, I will tell you again, that's too many. But if Xavier Tillman goes 3 of 9 tomorrow, nobody's complaining. Oh, they're only complaining because he's going 0 for 4 or 0 for 5. Those shots, some of those shots are going to go down. People forget Xavier Tillman hit one of the most clutch shots in recent Grizzlies playoff history.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a pro. It's well established. This is a pro Xavier Tillman podcast. Xavier Tillman staying here.
And our gripe is not Xavier Tillman.
No, it's not Xavier Tillman. This is X. I know you're a big fan of the podcast. This has nothing to do with you, Bubba. Keep doing you, man. But we need somebody else to make those shots.
He's catching strays as well.
That's it. But, and I own that. Like, we're bodying him for no reason. We're just frustrated with the overall product, and it is what it is. Sorry, X.
Yeah. So the shots are going to start to fall. They're too good of looks. The offense is working. They're just not making anything.
I don't know.
I'm done talking. The only way it goes really bad is if we find out that these guys just aren't capable of making open shots, and if that's the case, we're doomed anyways.
We're doomed anyway. Yeah, it's officially college baseball season if that's the case. But
no, it's still football season, brother.
Well, for some of them. Speaking of football, we're gonna move right into go ahead and move into our football talk. Look, Drew, you and I both went 3-3 last week against the spread. At 3-3, man, you're gambling. That puts you at 25-22 for the year. That puts me at 23-24. So I'm right there in the thick of it. I got Tennessee, Georgia, and South Carolina covering. You got Tennessee, Oregon, and Louisville beating Duke. And then we move into this week, And
boy, did Louisville beat Duke.
I mean, like a drum.
Yeah, and I was right about Oregon too. When I was right, I was really right.
You were really right. That's it. I took Utah. I thought they'd be giant killers one more time, and buddy, I bet against the wrong Pac-12 team. But we'll kind of quickly touch on last week. You've already talked about your experience some. Talk about Ole Miss a little bit. I'll touch on State. I don't want to dwell there, and we'll preview this week's games.
Yeah, so for Ole Miss, it was a nondescript game. It was a game against Vanderbilt in which they covered. But they got up 26-0, and they just took their foot off the gas. And it was not necessarily the players gave up. I don't think that at all. But play calling was very vanilla. It was, you've got Texas A&M next week. Get out of the game healthy, and let's not put anything else on film that we don't have to. It was an easy win. It was a comfortable win. You got out to a 26-0 lead in the first quarter or, first half of the second quarter. And you coasted, and I have no problem with that. I'm glad that, I was in I was in person, and a lot of people would say that they wish that they had a competitive game to watch, something more exciting, get the blood flowing. I was totally comfortable with just beating them and getting out the door and setting up a huge matchup, the biggest game we've had since LSU this weekend at home against Texas A&M.
Massive game.
Yeah, it was a nice, comfortable win, and I'm happy with how it went.
Yeah.
What about you? I mean, you had a big game, coming off a big, your first SEC win of the year. You got to go play at just a terrible Auburn team, and y'all won, right?
All we did was make Peyton Thorne look like friggin' Joe Namath out there, just friggin' slinging the ball. He was one of the highest rated quarterbacks in college football last week. After Auburn came in averaging a measly 13 points a game, we sucked, man. We played awful. That was bad football. I wisely chose to go to the Coastal Carolina football game and listen to it on the radio. It was awful. Like, it was it was a bad defensive effort. Whatever we did right defensively against Arkansas, we did none of that against a worse Auburn team. We gave it back to Matt Brock is what we did.
No, you played Arkansas. that's what it was.
It's just miserable, man. Like, I don't know. Anyway, state loss. We got embarrassed. We play Kentucky this weekend, homecoming, and they've got my hopes up, man. They keep showing these clips of it's gonna feel like Tennessee, like feels like '98, right? They keep showing Jamie Johnson and Wayne Mackin and these great throwbacks to when we wore the MSU interlocking MSU that we're going to wear this weekend against Kentucky. So at least we're going to look good. We're going to look good in our throwbacks. We got the throwback field. It looks just like it did back in the day, for the bulk of the 90s when we were sponsored by, actually had Nike uniforms and looked good before we went to that cheap Russell crap. But yeah, Kentucky this weekend. I'll kind of highlight that real quick, and then I'll turn it back over to you for that big game with Ole Miss and A&M, because it's got a lot more implications than our little homecoming game. But in the last 10 games, the home team is 5-0 in this series. State is a 5-point home underdog. Not much to say. I mean, Kentucky runs the ball pretty well. Ray Davis could embarrass us on Saturday. I hope that there's an ounce of pride left in this football team that we're going to put on that interlocking MSU. We're going to channel some of those games from back in the day. We're actually going to play some competitive football. We're talking about this off air. This game really should have been the 11 a.m. Central, 12 o'clock noon kick, but they wisely buried it underneath Alabama and LSU. We've got the doubleheader this weekend, the CBS doubleheader, the Missouri-Georgia game, which I'm excited about, and we'll get into some previews of this here in a few minutes. And then LSU-Alabama's at 7:45, and we kick off at 7:30 Eastern. So only for about 15 minutes will we be the focus of national attention, and then we're going to be buried by Alabama and LSU. Thank goodness, because this is awful. Like I said earlier, the only people going to be watching this game are going to be me and Aaron Ivey, because we're the only ones that care about this game, and that's it. Everybody else going to be watching Alabama and LSU.
Yeah, I kind of have mixed feelings about this game because of the stats that you say that the home team has won each of the last 10 years, and, history matters-ish, but Kentucky had a rough game Saturday. They played well enough to win against Tennessee, but they lost again, and it's just kind of one of those defeated weeks to where you're just like, it's not that you lost, but it's that you lost to them. Mm-hmm. And so are they going to be mad and come back and respond and beat Mississippi State like they should? Are they going to see red, and just take out all their frustrations of another loss against Tennessee out against Mississippi State? Or will it go the other way and they let Tennessee beat them twice? Yeah. If they let Tennessee beat them twice, they're going to have to really struggle in this game against Mississippi State, because Mississippi State has no pulse offensively. They have no pulse defensively. They truly look like an inept football team. Mm-hmm. And
we're very bad.
Not me as a hater. You're agreeing with me.
I am a Mississippi State grad, alum, fan of the greatest university in the country, and we are awful.
Yeah, they look really bad, and they play really bad. And Kentucky should. I mean, State looks at Kentucky the way that Ole Miss looks at Vanderbilt, and it's not really fair, because if history shows us, it's a 50-50 game every time. But Mississippi State thinks they should beat Kentucky every year, just like Ole Miss thinks they should beat Vanderbilt.
And we did for a long time, but in
But Mark
recent years.
Stoops has done wonders.
Right, done
You know,
great things the last 9 years there. So they're winning a lot more football games. But you're absolutely right. This is
but
like usually this is a game we
State
can win.
For Mississippi State fans to see Kentucky coming into town and Vegas has got them as a what did you say 4.5 point dog at home,
5 point
five
dog.
point dog at home to Kentucky. That's as insulting as you can get. You know,
Yeah.
the only thing worse is when if Ole Miss continues playing really good football and on Thanksgiving night Ole Miss shows up into Starkville as a 12-point favorite. It'd be the only thing worse, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's bad.
It's
really
bad
bad
football. We spend enough time talking about bad football. At least talk about the competitive game. I think this this Ole Miss A&M game has some potential to be competitive just because of the defense that A&M plays. And can Ole Miss offense get rolling like they have in some games, or are they going to struggle early to get momentum?
Yeah. So there's no doubt that Texas A&M has a bunch of blue chip players, especially on defense. They probably got the defensive player of the year playing linebacker for them. He's a stud.
Cooper kid, he's so good.
But the stats on A&M, they have lost 8 consecutive true road games. Lane has beat them the last 2 years, once at home, once on the road. I've said on this podcast, and I've told friends, I will never respect Texas A&M until Jimbo's gone. I think that Jimbo has somehow, I mean, it's apparent that he's lost his touch. He can still recruit gangbusters, but it's like the offensive game has passed him by. He can't organize his team. He cannot put in a good product on the field despite having the players. I don't know if you saw Lane's press conference this week. He is the ultimate troll. It's so funny, and it's apparent that he hates Jimbo Fisher, but he masks it in such a way to just give him the worst backhanded comments ever. You know, they asked him one time, they said, so Jimbo's on the, is reported to be on the hot seat. Do you think that there's a chance that their players could rally around Jimbo? And Lane, in his wit, just said, he was supposed to be on the hot seat last year, and that didn't turn out too well for him. And he kept on talking about how well the offense looks, how much better the offense looks, how more well-rounded and unpredictable the offense looks. And every time he complimented Bob Petrino, he kept on saying, "Yeah, Bob Petrino's there, so the offense looks a lot better." It's just a whole bunch of backhanded comments, and there's no doubt that Jimbo down the road has somewhere in the past has really gotten in his crawl. He kept talking about they have a huge collection of talent. They've got 5 stars all over the place, and they should be they've got an NFL roster over there, and their offense looks so much better now that Petrino is over there. And he could just digging at Jimbo all day. There's no doubt that Lane wants to just beat the ever-living snot out of Jimbo for something in the past. Maybe it's just being him, and Jimbo's not an easy guy to root for. So
at all.
I think that to the game itself, the game is going to be won and lost up front. It's how good you can protect Jackson Dart versus that defensive line of Texas A&M. And can you get on them in a hurry? This team has shown a lot of character this year. They've shown that I don't believe that Ole Miss is a top 4 team in the country. I keep looking at standings, and we're number 10 in the college football playoff, the initial college football playoff rankings that came out this week. There's a path for us to be in the top 4. That you keep holding out hope that things break right your way and you could backdoor your way into a playoff, and certainly that's a possibility. But I just don't think that this team is good enough to have that conversation yet. If you can get through Texas A&M and stun Georgia, then all bets are off. But this team knows how to win. They don't let things rattle you. Rusty, you like to bring up a lot how last year ended and how it spiraled. There's been opportunities in every single game except for Vanderbilt where Ole Miss last year you felt like that was when you lost the game. you beat Arkansas by 7, and there was an opportunity late where you're just like, all right, this is where it goes haywire, and then Jackson Dart throws a bad pick with the opportunity to go up by 3 scores against Arkansas. Against Auburn, and you think, well, this is the time where you lose it, or against LSU, where this is the time where you lose it. But every single week, they get out there and they keep their heads about them. Cooler heads prevail, and it seems like the leadership and the experience kind of takes over, and they've got a new mindset about them to where they're truly a next play mentality. As cliche as that sounds, they just don't let bad things get on top of them. And consistently, every single game this year that's mattered, they found a way to win when it mattered. They've made that drive late. They've, made that stop to.
The only time they didn't was the Alabama game. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I'm about to compliment Ole Miss. So listeners, here we go. I've been impressed with how they've been finishing games. This is not the same team as last year. There was a lot of distractions about this time last year that started coming up. They haven't come up this year. And so this team looks focused. They look determined. This is a dangerous team down the stretch. There's a couple tough games ahead of them. A&M, Georgia's looming. There's some tough football games still to be played. But this team is poised to make a deep run in the SEC if some things break and go their way.
Yeah, they've got some moxie about them. It seems like this is a theme that is, again, true this year, as it has been in the last few years, is that Lane's offense always has it's what people talk about. But it's the defense that keeps winning us games when it matters most. The offense this year has made the key drive to take the lead or extend the lead, but the defense has played good enough to win these games. And with the exception of Alabama and Lane, as they coexist, could have a book written about it. It's different. It is a problem, and it's a chink in his armor against Alabama. But he's shown that the offense this year has made enough plays, and the defense has been good enough to hold these inferior opponents, although close and peers of us, to be able to hold them at bay. And that's why, if Ole Miss does not kick the ball to Aeneas Smith. Aeneas Williams was the old.
Arias Williams was.
Yeah.
Arias Williams at Mississippi State, but Aeneas Smith is his name. Welcome to the Two Buck Sports Podcast, where we butcher your name.
Yeah. And so if they don't make the mistake of, kicking to him and letting him return a kickback or any kind of game-breaking plays like that, I think Ole Miss wins. I think the first half is kind of a dogfight a little bit. I think it's going to be close for a while. But if Ole Miss is showing you anything, it's that they've got an ability at halftime to make some key adjustments and to kind of run away from, or to keep these other teams an arm's length away, far enough away to where they can't take the lead, but and then you put them away late, and that's what I think will happen if Ole Miss can keep it close, have a lead or tied, or even be slightly behind at half. I trust that at half they'll make those key adjustments to go out and win. On offense for Texas A&M, Max Johnson isn't scaring you. You've played Jalen Daniels. You've played Jaden Milroe.
Looks like Drew's having some technical difficulties and froze on me there. So we'll keep this going until he can come back. But he's absolutely right. We got Ole Miss. As good as they've been offensively, it makes it so much worse as a Mississippi State fan how we're setting football back by probably 40 years. Like, the worst thing that happened to Mississippi State was the fact that the forward pass was invented back in the 50s, because we've looked so bad. And so it's frustrating to watch, and, call it watching little brother or whatever. It's frustrating to watch Ole Miss be so dynamic and such a good playmaker this year. Playmakers like across the board. Their offense is dynamic, pumping out points. As a State fan, it's frustrating because we're falling further and further behind that. But if Ole Miss can get their stuff together this weekend, like Drew said, they play mistake-free football. They get it to where we're back. They keep the game, keep the gas pedal down. This game shouldn't be close in the second half. As close as it might be in the first half, it shouldn't be in the second half. Welcome back, sir.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm not going to get on this podcast and say that Ole Miss should blow out Texas A&M. I don't think the history of this game is that it's close. However, I do believe Ole Miss is better. I do believe that at quarterback position we're better. At running back position we're better. At the head coaching position we're better. There's just no reason why I can think that Ole Miss should lose this game. But I do know that things get a little squirrely, and I do expect a dogfight. I'm never going to expect a blowout.
As you said on this podcast, we don't bet on chaos in this podcast. So
No.
we're gonna expect a dogfight and a good football game. But that'll kind of lead us into the rest of our predictions for this coming week. We've got 5 games that we're going to bet on this week. Again, we both went 3-3 last week against the spread, so we'll put this on Instagram. Definitely forgot last week. I was tired Saturday morning, completely skipped my mind. But we'll get those posted this week so our fans can vote on who they think is going to win the football games. But Drew, we'll start with that late night Saturday night tick. We've got LSU going to Tuscaloosa playing Alabama. Alabama's a 3-point home favorite, which that line is scary. What do you think? You think the Tigers have got enough to knock off Alabama in Tuscaloosa, or do they continue their march to the SEC championship game?
It's tricky. I do think that this will be the biggest test that Alabama's had so far.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that Jaden Daniels has been a lot better. I think that he can basically zip up the Heisman race, the Heisman Trophy, with a win. Where's this game at again?
It's in Tuscaloosa.
So with a game on the road, a win on the road against Alabama, to beat him for a second time in a row, I believe that would zip up the Heisman talk. There's not really a front runner this year, not since –
Mm-hmm.
Caleb Williams kind of collapsed on himself.
Yeah.
I don't. What's the line?
3.
3. Alabama -3.
Yep.
And I think I'm going to take LSU here. I think that Jaden Daniels. If you look, they've in every LSU broadcast. If you've watched any LSU this year. They have put up the Jaden Daniels numbers against the historic, what I believe is the best quarterback season of all time, being Joe Burrow's
2019 season.
Heisman National Championship at LSU. And he is step for step with Joe Burrow in all passing categories. He's got, I think, 3 interceptions on the year. He has just been absolutely outstanding. The question in this game is the same question that LSU has had in every single game. Is can they stop anybody?
Yeah.
And that's going to be the challenge. If you can make Alabama one-dimensional, then stops become easier.
Yeah.
If you know that you're going to be able to, if you can stop Jalen Milrose rushing, then if that's all you've got to worry about, then it becomes easier, obviously. Right. But that's going to be the key. And so I think that LSU does it. I'm still a believer. I'm a believer in Jaden Daniels. I'm a believer in the coach there at LSU, whose name that I just blanked on.
Brian Kelly.
Yeah, I think LSU covers.
All right. I'm taking Alabama. Alabama struggles stopping mobile quarterbacks, but LSU struggles stopping anybody. And I think that Alabama with Jace McClellan, Milroe can control the football game. They can control the tempo. They can keep the football. They can lean on LSU in that second half and do what Alabama does best. I think it's close at halftime, 10-7, 7-6, something like that. And then Alabama just leans on LSU for 2 quarters and pulls away and wins covering at home. Next up is the earlier CBS game. We've got Missouri playing at Georgia. Georgia's a 15-point home favorite. I don't think that Georgia is a 15-point better football team than Missouri. I don't know that Missouri can beat Georgia, but I'm taking the Tigers to cover on the road. Missouri's got one of the best wide receiver duos in the country. Their quarterback's playing at a very high level. Their defense is also playing very well. They are about a minute and a half meltdown against LSU away from coming into this game undefeated, completely unblemished. They almost beat Georgia last year. It took a Brock Bowers touchdown in the final 2 minutes to win that football game in Columbia. And Georgia ain't got Brock Bowers. They've not looked the part at all this year. And this is going to be a tough home test. And so I'm going to take the Tigers to cover against Georgia.
I think that Georgia beats the ever-living crap out of them. I'm not going to lie to you. I think for two reasons. Georgia's played with their food all year long, but the College Football Playoff Committee jumped them with Ohio State this year.
Did.
Kirby Smart, you've heard the talks he gives them, and I don't think I've told on this podcast before, emotions only get you through the first quarter, in my opinion. But this is a team that can turn it on when they want to. They beat the snot out of Florida.
In Kentucky.
Yeah, and in Kentucky, they've turned it on when they want to. And I believe that they're going to be motivated this week to absolutely crush Missouri. They've got them at home, 2:30, CBS. Everybody wants to talk about Missouri and how good of a story they've been. The College Football Playoff Committee inexplicably jumped them with Ohio State. It's one thing if you pick Michigan. I mean, Michigan's killed everybody. But to jump them with Ohio State, who hasn't got a good win, I mean, other than Notre Dame, which they should have lost.
Right, 100%.
And Penn State, which they blew Penn State out of the water. And so I think that they are mad. I think that they're just going to absolutely kill them. Ladd McConkney's like healthy again. They are down Brock Bowers. I get that. He is the best pass catcher in college football. But he ain't the only weapon
they've got. You're not wrong. They got some running backs in there that are pretty good.
Their quarterback is settled in. He actually looks good. You know, he's not Joe Burrow by any means. He's not Jaden Daniels, but he's good. He's solid, and he can get it to his weapons. And I think they're just going to beat the ever-living dog crap out of Missouri this week.
There you go.
I'll take your 15.5 or 15, whatever it is, but I think they beat them by 24.
Wow.
Yeah, I think they take out all their frustrations, and I hope that they expend all the energy that they've got.
There it is.
Because we're coming to Athens next week.
That's why. We'll see. I don't think Missouri loses by more than 15, but I don't think they win. Yeah. Next up, we got a battle of the mids, and the only reason it's on here is an SEC game, and it should be a competitive one. We've got Arkansas playing at Florida. Florida's a 4.5-point home favorite, and Florida doesn't lose at home this year. They played much better at home. Graham Mertz has played a lot better at home, but Florida's a 4.5-point home favorite.
Yeah, Florida. Give me Florida. I don't like Florida, but I hate Arkansas. They've put up 3 points against Mississippi State at home, and you're going to give me,
And Sam Pittman, after the game, basically said, we didn't know what we were doing out there.
Yeah, and Sam Pittman is going to be fired. Those talks are going on. There's no doubt at Week 10 here that Arkansas players are hearing from other teams if they're any good at all. Yep. Like, you're going to have a new coach there next week. Next year. With a bad loss against Florida, you may have an interim coach in there next week.
Yeah.
Those talks are being had amongst players. They're 0 however many SEC games they've played, including a 7-3 loss at home to Mississippi State, who has one SEC win now.
That one.
And so I told you at that game, the Arkansas Mississippi State game, that the loser would go 0-8 in the SEC, and it's because at that point that was your shot to have a respectable year. You play 4 non-conference games, you got to win 2 SEC games, and neither of those teams were going to win 2 SEC games to give them anything to look forward to. And by anything, I mean like a Birmingham Bowl, a Hawaii Bowl,
Liberty Bowl.
Nothing to look forward to without winning that game. And Arkansas lost it. I think they go 0-8 in the SEC. I think they lose handedly on the road at Gainesville this week.
Yeah, I agree. We've already talked about these last two, so we'll be quick with them. We've already kind of given our picks for the week, but I am taking Ole Miss to cover at home, 3 points. I think Ole Miss is a better football team than A&M. I think this is probably somewhere in like a 10 to 12 point football game. I think Ole Miss, as I said earlier, if they can keep their foot on the gas, will kind of pull away from A&M in the second half. I think Ole Miss gets a big home win before they hit the road to go to Athens next week.
Yeah, this line scares me because if Ole Miss is as good as I think Ole Miss is at home, this should be 6.5, 7 point line. And so to me, it screams that Vegas is begging people to take Ole Miss, which scares me. I had the same feeling when Ole Miss played Alabama. However, as I laid out earlier, Ole Miss has got the better quarterback. They've got the better running back. They've got the better coach. They're playing at home. I wish it was a night game, but either way, it's going to be a big game. I'm getting the vibes that even despite it being an 11 o'clock game, that place is going to be as rowdy as possible. There in the vault Saturday at 11 o'clock. I think Ole Miss wins because they're better. I think they win. I think they cover. Like you said, I think this game should have been on a 6.5, 7.5 point line.
Yeah. I would still take Ole Miss.
Yeah. And I would hesitate a little bit at that point. But I do think that Ole Miss is 7 points better than Texas A&M, which makes it a no-brainer for me to take the Rebels minus the points.
Yep. And then lastly, we got another mid-off. We got Kentucky at Mississippi State. Kentucky is a 5-point road favorite. I'm taking my dogs. Again, the home team is 5-0 in the last 10. As bad as we looked against Auburn, as bad as we looked against Arkansas, history matters in this series. I'm mostly picking out of desperation. Dear God, please let us win this football game. In the 98 throwbacks, the interlocking MSU. I'm taking my dogs at home. Don't make me sad.
Yeah, history is a thing that I don't really subscribe to too much. I think it is important for the context for fans. However, I just, Ole Miss had not beat Auburn in back-to-back years since the 50s. Well, they did that this year. Their streaks were broken like that all the time. There was a brand new lowest over-under score of all time 2 weeks ago, and then it was broke again the next week. Once upon a time, a few years back, Melvin Gordon broke Barry Sanders' single-game rushing record that had been standing for 20 years, only to have Samaje Perine from Oklahoma beat it the next week.
Right.
History's history, and it can change in a minute. It does give me a little pause if I thought the two teams were virtually equal. I would side with the home team and recent history, but I just don't think Mississippi State is any good at all. I think I'm low on Kentucky, but Kentucky is, if anything, is scrappy. I don't get the feeling that State is scrappy. I feel like they're just bad, and they are what they are, and they are realizing it. That game against Auburn, 11 o'clock on the Plains, could not have been less inspiring of an effort in the first half. You come out there on somebody else's turf in another game that record-wise tells you that you've got a shot, and to go down that big that early, what was it, like 23-3 or 24-3 at some point?
Yep.
And at that point, Hugh Freeze even admitted, it's like, I didn't go for, y'all think I didn't go for the jugular, but they weren't scoring, so the punt was being aggressive, and that's the team that Mississippi State's got this year.
Unfortunately,
they may have had a pulse with Will Rogers in this game. They're not going to have it with the academic weapon, as you call it. I think Kentucky cruises. I think in the third quarter, people are leaving that game.
Yeah. You might be right.
The best
it would
seat
serve
in the
a
house
purpose.
will be in the junction. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, it'll serve a purpose. If we lose, it'll serve a purpose. So,
and I'm gonna just hit that point home again one more time. If any Mississippi State fan is holding on to an Egg Bowl win as a successful season and should give your coach another year, then you think way too much of this rivalry. It's not about the Egg Bowl.
No.
This dude,
the
Zach
product
Arnett,
has been
needs
so
to,
bad this year.
You cannot make
Kevin
a
Barber
reaction.
needs to go.
You cannot make a reactionary decision on an Egg Bowl win this year.
Yep.
And I'll tell you the same thing. If Jackson Dart rolls his ankle and misses the second half, and Quinshon Judkins blows out a knee, and Ole Miss loses in the Egg Bowl, if any Mississippi State fan wants to keep Zach Arnett because of an Egg Bowl win,
get
you
out.
prove your little brother, and this means way too much because you do not have big picture in mind.
Get out. It's, as I said earlier, it's just a bad product. And like
I said,
he clearly in over his head. We rushed him into the head coaching position. It's Matt Luke all over again. It's awful. It's awful.
And I said the same thing when Ole Miss got emotional over Matt Luke's interim season when they won the Egg Bowl and hired him. Mississippi State did the same thing when Ole Miss hired Lane Kiffin, and then 2 weeks after the season ended, they decided to fire.
There was more layers to it, but that was the nail in the casket. But anyway, that's enough about Mississippi State. We're done with that. We do these every week.
Mississippi, I do think that Kentucky beats Mississippi State.
Yeah, I got that. So we've got our first college football playoff. We've been doing our top 4 every week. Do you agree with the top 4, or is yours a little bit different?
No, it's probably the teams I would have had. However, I don't think that Ohio State has done anything to convince me. It's kind of like the whole video review process. It's like it's got to be indisputable evidence to jump Georgia, and I don't think Ohio State has done that. I would have had probably had Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, and Oregon would probably have been my 4th team. And that's probably what I would do for my 4 right now. Now that we're actually getting into it, I'm not going to be as cute with it. Yeah. I was the red flags were up with Oklahoma going into this game against on the road against Kansas last week, with them struggling against UCF the week before. It turned out to be a total frauds, and they got dropped like they should have.
They did.
The cream rises to the top, as you said.
Shout out Macho Man. I agree. My teams would be the same, maybe a little bit different order. I would go Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, Ohio State would be my top 4, just because Florida State's still one of the best teams in the country, I think. And Michigan right now, while they still have their head coach and their coaching staff intact, is one of the better teams in the country. It's a wild saga.
Florida State did slip my mind just a minute ago, and they've been on my list all year. I would drop. I will balk. I will change my tune. I will balk on that. Yeah. And I would actually put, Florida.
You got Florida State, you got Washington. You said Oregon.
No, I said Oregon, and I stand by Oregon. And the battle would be for the 4th spot between Ohio State and Oregon. Because I do believe that Florida State, Georgia, and Michigan are the top 3 teams in the league.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. And we'll get that settled in a couple of weeks when Michigan and Ohio State play. Florida State and Georgia should both arrive in this undefeated. And we'll go from there. We'll see how the season kind of wraps up.
Yeah. So we'll see. This is a big weekend of football. You're going to get a big weekend this weekend and a big weekend next weekend, and everybody's going to take off the week before Thanksgiving and play Southern Miss and Louisiana Monroe. Right. Before we get to rivalry week. Yeah. But enjoy this.
Football ahead of us. Yeah.
Yeah. We're at week 10 here. Each of our teams have played 8 games, and we are 2/3 of the way through the season. And so really start cherishing these last few weeks here, because before you know it, it's going to be gone.
It's going to be gone. And so enjoy it while it lasts. Speaking of, enjoy this podcast while it lasts. Uncle Buck, you got anything else you want to talk about?
No, that's it. I do want to put it on people's radar. College basketball tips off next week. Yep. It's about 2 months of nothing games. But for the first time since Marshall Henderson, I'm kind of looking forward to an Ole Miss basketball season. There's a lot of things to be excited about, a lot of players that's come in that's to be excited about. And I know Mississippi State had a good year the last couple years. Yeah, excited about Chris Jans as well. We will mention it on the pod.
We've got a couple of injuries that are going to slow us down a little bit, namely Tolu Smith, who is one of the top 35 players in the country. But we'll get both of those guys back by SEC ball, so we'll miss the first part of the season. So still a lot to be excited about for Mississippi State basketball. If you're a fan, it's not going to be very watchable basketball because we're going to get in the mud. We're going to win games 54-50. But it's going to be, if you're a State fan, there's some good basketball ahead of
The
us.
Iowa of college basketball.
That's
what
it.
Mississippi State is.
We're going to defend you when you get off the bus, and we ain't going to score a whole bunch. So,
R.I.P. to old boy Ferrix.
And R.I.P. to the legend Bob Knight. Bobby Knight passed away this week. Former head basketball coach, Indiana, famous for throwing a chair across the court. R.I.P. to Bobby Knight.
Yeah, Bobby Knight Ranger.
That's
our last Parks and Rec shout out for the day.
That's it. But let's put a bow on this Heinz 57 episode. I meant to mention that earlier, but really the only names I can come up with are NFL Hall of Famer Olin Kreutz, who was the center for the Bears.
All I could see.
And then Bart Can't Wait Scott for the New York Jets, with one of the greatest interviews of all time with Sal Palantonio. But we'll put a bow on this Heinz 57 episode. Drew, tell them where they can find us at.
Yeah, Rusty, you can find this here podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, or whatever your preferred method is. Search the number 2 Buck Sports Podcast there. Subscribe to us. Give us a comment. Give us a little thumbs up in there. We'd greatly appreciate it. Any comments that come with a 5-star review, we will read them here on the air. You can also find us on our Instagram. It's where we do most of our posting, most of our interaction. It's at the number 2 Buck Sports Podcast. And if you want to see our beautiful faces here on a later than usual sleepy night here on a Thursday night, if you can watch us live on our YouTube channel at the number 2 Buck Sports Podcast. Anything else I need to add? If not, that'll do it for me, and that'll do it for us tonight, Rusty.
Yes, sir. Guys, thank y'all again for being here. We'll see y'all next week.
See you guys.